Over the last decade and a half, I have interviewed literally hundreds, maybe like well over 1,000 candidates today. And for every person I've interviewed, I've also looked at like probably 10 resumes, maybe more, 10 to 15 resumes. So I have quite a bit of experience evaluating resumes. But then on the other hand, I've also worked with hundreds of students to help them with their resumes to land some of the best jobs in venture capital, private equity, investment banking, etc. And so as part of that, like I've done a lot of like resume makeovers, and I thought maybe it would be helpful to you all to see me go through a resume makeover today on my channel. This video is hopefully really helpful if you're applying for a job in high finance, so investment banking, management consulting, private equity, etc. If you're applying for something more along like, video editor or therapist or what have you, probably less helpful. All right, so this resume I received from a friend of mine, and look, like on its face, like no offense to my friend, but I would probably rate this as like a C plus. I mean, like the formatting is not horrible, but it's not great either. There's a lot to do here. There's a lot of content here, but it's like smushed together. It's hard to read, a lot of white space. And then as you go in and you look a little bit closer, there's a lot of things that could be really improved, in my opinion. So that's the resume on the left. The resume on the right is a template that I think is a really, really good one. We'll include the link to where you can find this template online in the comments below, so be sure to check that out. Make sure that your resume fits like this general template. It doesn't have to be exact, but it needs to look pretty close, because interviewers are going to be looking at this and like right off the gate they're going to be like, does this fit what I'm typically seeing or not? And if it's not, then they're going to be like, this person doesn't really know what they're doing, and subconsciously they're going to be biased against you. And then the other thing is that the right template will allow them to read through your resume quicker, so that they're focused less on the formatting of what you're doing, right? You want formatting to kind of just blend away in the background, and what you really want people to focus on is the actual content that's there. So the formatting needs to be done in such a way that it's like not distracting at the end of the day. That's really what you're looking for. So let's go through, and basically I'm gonna just take her stuff and I'm going to put it in this general format, as well as like give critiques and comments as we work through this. So first of all, look, I think what she's got here is fine. So state, phone, email address. Now here she's got her email address in this like hyperlink format. I would get rid of that, so I just remove hyperlink. It's just ugly and distracting. And look, we can just copy this all the way over here. Yeah, I'm just gonna go through this. I'm just pulling all of this stuff over into this format. All right, so I deleted that part out because she doesn't have any experience working in an investment bank or other investment firm yet, but once she does, then that would go back in. So as we're going through, she didn't list her GPA. Look, unless she has less than a 3.5, she probably needs to be listing it here. And if it's lower than like a 3.9, 3.8, 3.7 probably, then she should also highlight her GPA for just her major. The other thing that I would recommend is maybe considering her including her ACT or SAT scores, although if they're not particularly high, then don't include them. Honors and awards. So I revamped this. So over here in her old resume, she had campus experience as its own thing, but really it's just part of education, right? There was also like, if you look at her resume, just like this is all caps, but this is not. So it's just a little confusing. Also, there's things like there should be some space between these, for example. Just creating a little bit more space so it's a little bit easier to read. So you can look over here, and basically what's happened is this feels a lot more filled out than this does, in that there's a lot less white space along the sides, right? We cut out a lot of that. Not as much white space across the top. We also made like her name a little bit bigger and added some space so it just kind of fills in. And overall, this resume just feels a lot more filled out, in my opinion, just kind of glancing at it. And then let's see, I did honors and awards. So she's in track and field. She's a scholar athlete, won a bunch of awards. She's also in the choir, and then she's got relevant finance coursework here. So again, if you watch some of my other videos, you know that I don't really love relevant coursework, but include it, I guess, if you need to fill up space. I would love to see does she have any scholarships, right? That we can highlight through here. Has she done any case competitions? Is there anything else that we could include here that really bolster what she's done so far at her university? Moving on to her work experience. Now, here's the thing. If you're applying for a job in high finance, you're going to want some experiences in business. But, where do you start if you don't have any experience? It's hard to get experience if you don't have experience, right? So if I were her, she hasn't done anything in high finance yet. And so it's fine to include these things, but what I would be focused on is how can I show them that I am just a super hard worker? So I heard this term years ago. I was watching this or listening to this this talk on how to do better at sales, and the guy referenced this idea of being a dual bagger, and what he referred to by that is you're at the grocery store and you're checking out. And you ever get that person that's it's a young kid usually that's just super excited to work really hard, and instead of taking your groceries and putting them one at a time in one bag, they got 2 bags going, both hands going, and they're going super fast and get you in and out really quickly, right? That's the kind of person you want to demonstrate that you are a dual bagger. And what I mean by that is even if all you're doing is bagging groceries, which is not a super glamorous job, doesn't pay super well, right? But doesn't matter, wherever you are put, you shine, you work hard, you do great things. And I think that's what she really needs to focus on here is hey, yeah, so what that I've been, I don't have any true finance experiences. If you look at these experiences, I work hard no matter where I'm put, and I can figure this out. She needs to prove she is smart, so she can figure this stuff out, and that she will work super hard, twice as hard as the person next to her that doesn't have that might have more experience than she does. So as we go through this, right, as I'm reading through it, it's introduce company products to new clientele to improve sales. Okay, so how could we make that even better? So maybe what we do is she should be thinking hey, did you have a quota? Did you hit quota? What were the store performance numbers over time? Could she say something generated, $10,000 in sales to new clientele? Right? Something like that would be a lot more impactful than just saying oh yeah, when a new customer came in the door, I showed them what we had, right? Show us how you went above and beyond. Created, built, and managed influencer brand relations. Okay, so that's really interesting. What was the outcome of that? And how many influencers did she manage? Some of those things I think would be really interesting to talk about. Marketed and advertising, by how much? So again, changing this from a description of what you do to a description of accomplishments that you've had. Super important. Because again, what we're trying to get at is that she works super hard. She's creative. She's smart, right? In terms of how she approaches this. So even though it's not finance related, it's hey, I'm doing the best I can with what I've been given and what I've been able to achieve so far. Here we've got, sales associate, stylist, identify customer needs. Look, I think a lot of these things are the same, right? How much in sales? Improve sales by how much, right? Give us some numbers here. So some other things, look, she's taking principles accounting, intro to business, personal finance, business seminar. I wonder if they're like, are there any projects that she did that are finance related that she could talk about? Because that would potentially be something worth mentioning here to kind of point at like, hey, I don't have a lot of experience, but I've got some, and here's what I've done that's finance related. TJ Maxx greeted patrons and assistant overall satisfaction leading to increased sales. You can already guess what you're going to ask about here, right? Which is by how much? Is there something, anything that she can show that demonstrates like an increase in sales, an increase in customer satisfaction, like maybe she was employee of the month or something. Give us something that makes this a little more concrete. Otherwise, it's just like, oh yeah, I was great. I did a great job. Prove it. Like, I don't know if that's true or not, right? But if you came to me and said, oh yeah, I increased sales by 100% month over month, then I'm like, okay, maybe you were really good, right? Like, I'm more inclined to believe what you say when you say like, yeah, I was really good. All right, down here, I've got that she was a model, so university runway and print modeling. I just changed that up a little bit so that would be kind of the entity that she was working for or with or what have you, and what her job was. I think this is kind of fun. I don't know that like this modeling experience is like the end all be all and may not be super relevant to continue putting on here over time. But being a volunteer, I think that's something that's worthwhile to always include. I think being a dancer is important. Over time, as she gets more experiences, these things can get compressed into fewer things or just consolidated into like one. Like I was a model, I was a dancer, and could fit under a single line. If we look at like additional, so oftentimes this is like additional skills or abilities or awards or what have you. So here she's got like, okay, here's some, products that I know how to use. So Microsoft Office, we should probably make that a semicolon or a colon, Excel, Word, PowerPoint. So in this case, like I would recommend getting some certificates here, because again, I don't know what it means that like she says like Microsoft, Excel, Word, PowerPoint. Like she's cracked them open and like written a Word document once. That's very different from being able to do a great job like formatting. Doesn't tell me anything about like maybe you want to include like words per minute for typing, teamwork skills, excellent communication. So to me, this is all fluff. All of this should be demonstrated in your experiences and the things you've done above, so I take that out. Then down here, she doesn't have any of this stuff. And so this is all stuff that I would include. And I would, if she doesn't speak other languages, that's fine, take it out. But she should have some favorite books. That's like an easy layup. And they should be relevant to the job she's applying for. So maybe she could put like favorite business books. One of my favorites is The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz from Andreessen Horowitz. That would be like an interesting thing to put here. And then she doesn't have really any of her interests in this area, although she does talk about them up here. So she sings, she dances, she models. Eventually, I would expect all of those things to end up down here and to be something along the lines of, here I really like how they, as their example, they put avid skier having skied across US, Europe, and Japan. Like that's cool. That's concrete. That's like, no, I don't just like skiing. It's like, hey, look at these like specific things I've done. She could put, model, fashion show 2021, Miss University, show, you know what I mean? Like she could put some things there. For example, like one of my things is on my resume, I have that I was black belt. Not only was I black belt, like I was a national champion for several years ago when I was in high school. So like that makes it more than just like karate. It's like karate, black belt, national champion. Now that's unique. People ask me about that. Now we have like an opportunity to create like something that's a little bit more of a personal bond going back and forth. Anyways, so this is where I would start with her. And now I would go back and have a conversation with her and say, okay, let's talk about your experience at Samsung as a college influencer. Okay, great. Let's go through, and I want to hear every single thing that you did, what your job description was, and then let's drill into each one of those like things that you did and talk about like what exact accomplishments can you come up with, right? And with those accomplishments, can we put numbers to them? So maybe it's like, oh yeah, like she kind of talks about how she created, built, and maintained an influencer brand relations. I would like to understand more like what that is, what that entailed. If it was like entrepreneurial and demonstrates that she's a self-starter, like those would all be interesting. The fact that she like created something and then could talk about like the outcome of what she created. All of those things I think would be really impactful and would potentially like move that bullet point from number 2 to number 1. And then I would do the same thing with all 3 of these. There might be some where like I might just take it off too. Like maybe there's enough interesting things to talk about with the influencer program that you fill up enough space that you drop the being a cashier at Roy Rogers, because really it's just not super relevant. That said, if you don't have enough experiences, like throw on what you got, right? And then in your cover letter, you might even talk about it. Be like, look, I didn't come from a super wealthy family. I had to work. And these are the jobs I could get, but I worked my tail off in every single job I had and did a really great job. And let me demonstrate that to you through this resume. For her, like the thing that like really stands out to me about her as a person is like she is very passionate, very driven as an individual. And when I look at her resume, that doesn't exactly come through to me. A little bit from like the sports and so forth, but I feel like there's a lot more that could come through. Well, hopefully this was helpful in terms of kind of seeing how at least like the first step of remaking this resume and how I would go about making these changes. And then like, frankly, she's got a lot of homework to take home and do to really flesh out this resume even further. Anyways, let me know what you think. If you want me to do a resume makeover or give you feedback, send it over via email. We've got an email down in the comments. Love to get some resumes that I can help improve for you all. And be sure to check out some of my other videos like getting hired instantly in VC, an expert resume review. Thanks.